Hey, this is Evan from Wilderun. You're watching RichardMetalFan.
So what's up, guys? Episode 66 of RichardMetalFan interviews here at Center Stage in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm here talking with Evan from Worldrun. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. So you just currently opened up day 2 of Prog Power in Atlanta. So how's that been?
Very fun. Yeah, this is one of those fests that we've kind of been, eyeballing for a while. Just because, yeah, I mean, when it comes to American Metal Fest, there's not really too many that fit like this sort of genre, So yeah, this was kind of like it made sense, and it was just I feel like it was a matter of time, So we were just really happy that Milton finally hooked us up. So
awesome,
yeah.
Shout out to you, man. So basically, this format is I want to do a quick rundown of your catalog as well as your musical journey from where you started to now. But before we go into that, I'm just curious, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to be a vocalist and guitarist?
Oh man, I think the first. This is a really weird one. The first extreme metal record I heard that kind of turned my head was the Sham Mirrors by Arcturus. I remember I had listened to some regular metal stuff and Metallica and all that, and I liked it, but it didn't really I don't know. I would have not considered myself a metal person until I actually got into the weirder stuff. I remember I heard that record just totally on a random whim, and I thought it was very bizarre and in a way that I was not expecting. So that record always stands out to me. I remember I heard Mabul by Orphanland. Basically, it was kind of interesting because I kind of delved into bizarre, just more kind of weird off the cuff metal, that I don't know. And then I heard Opeth and Agalok and some bands that have more directly influenced Worldrun, and I don't know, just kind of went from there. So,
right.
yeah.
And what were your bands before starting up Worldrun?
Oh man, I had a couple random bands in high school that I can't even. I don't know. It was just did covers and shit like that, kind of boring stuff. I played the first metal band I played in was a band called Earthen out of Chicago.
Yeah.
And the first metal fest I ever played was, or actually the first metal show of any sort I ever played was, it was called the Heathen Crusade up in Minnesota.
Oh wow! And
yeah, it was kind of cool because it was my introduction to metal shows was this cool festival, kind of like this, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I actually played keyboards in that band.
Oh, I never knew you were a keyboard player.
It was very simple. It was very and I'm not a very good keyboard player, but it was very just chords and stuff. So.
So Worldrun, I believe you all formed in 2008. How did you know the guys and stuff?
So I would say I usually say that when I say formed, I usually say 2012 because that's when we all met. Yeah. But 2008 was sort of when I started just fucking around with demos that went nowhere for a long time. So that was when I first started trying to make stuff, and then there was probably a 4-year period where there was a couple other members of the band. There was a first iteration of that didn't quite work out. Really good musicians, but it just didn't work out, and then it kind of fell by the wayside for a year or two, and then I met up with Wayne and John and Dan, and then it really came into full gear in 2012. So.
All right, and kind of before the debut, you were in your first band was called These Are Day, and they released the first album called Who Manifests in 2009. How did These Are Day form?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was more of That I was actually playing drums in that.
You're a drummer? Damn. What instruments can you play?
I've always kind of liked to just dabble in different instruments and not really become super proficient in any one. At least not to the level of the other guys in my band. I kind of just stick to the more chord-based, rhythm-based sort of way of playing things. Anyways, but these are they. Yeah, it's been a while since I even thought about that. I played drums. They were a Chicago death metal band, and there was a side project of November's Doom, which is a band that I knew a couple of the dudes from, and yeah, I actually forget. I think that was through Earthen actually that I got hooked up with them, and I played drums on the first EP, and it was fun. It was a really quick kind of side project thing for me, but it was a good time.
Yeah, and then you did Earthen that same year and released Ashes of Transition.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? Whole different mind frame going from These Are Day to Earthen.
I was a lot more. I was in Earthen for a few years. That was more of a band that I was definitely like, that was more of a solid project for a few years going. So I had a little more of a deeper relationship with them, and really good people, really good musicians, and I don't know. I mean, it was a little definitely more on the. I would say that Earthen was one of my introductions to the more melodic, folky kind of side of metal, especially playing in that sort of band, and a lot less death metal-y than These Are They, and yeah, I don't know. It was a while ago, but it was a good time. It was a good like formative metal experience for me. So.
All right, and then the next Earthen album was called System of the Seasons. What was that like, going from Ashes of Transition to System of the Seasons?
It was kind of at that point when that record was coming out. I think I was sort of transitioning away from Earthen at that point. Like Mike LeGros, the main kind of mastermind of Earthen, was kind of compiling all the songs together for that final record when I was sort of on my way out. So I didn't really have as much contribution to that record, but I really liked the final product. It was a good record.
All right, and then now we get to the debut Worldrun album, Olden Tales and Deathly Trails. Rose, what was the mind frame going into that? Did you want to try to do something different compared to These Are They and Earthen?
Yeah, well, I mean, Worldrun was definitely like my project. These Are They and Earthen I was just a player. Like I didn't really contribute to the writing at all. Maybe a little bit for Earthen, but not too much. So Worldrun was just me wanting to actually focus on writing, because I had just been playing for a while, and I've been writing on my own free time, but it hadn't actually turned into anything real. So Olden Tales was the first full-length record that I was able to put out with music that I wrote. I should say we put out, of course, but it was sort of, for me personally, it was the first time I was able to complete a record of material that I had really focused heavily on the songwriting. So it was a big moment for sure.
And this year marks 10 years since it first came out.
It does, yeah.
What I wanted to ask, and I probably know the answer anyway, is there a chance that we can get a celebration of that somehow?
We would like to do something. We've been talking about it. I don't know what it's going to be. We have been floating ideas around, but yeah, we'd love to do some sort of 10-year anniversary thing. Olden Tales is such a different record than everything we do now, so it's one of those records that we don't like touch that material too often, because it's kind of feels weird to put in a set list with our current material. But maybe we could do some throwback sets or something. I don't know, but we'll try something.
Yeah. And then that same year you did Replay Cure with Human Burden. Burden, how did you hook up with those guys?
Yeah, Replicier. It's a weird word. I know. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's a totally made up word, so it's fine. Replicier was happening sort of around the same time that Worldrun was first forming, but I was mostly just a vocalist. I helped contribute to some of the songwriting and arranging, but it was more in like the other dudes wrote riffs and I helped put them together sort of thing, helped try to like a little bit of the songwriting side of things, but I didn't really write, the riffs for that band. But yeah, really proud of the two records that I made with them. Really, really happy with those. Good times. Yeah, good times.
All right, and then you also did Immortal Bird with Arcasia. So yeah, how'd you hook up with those guys?
That was just I'm forgetting exactly how that. Well, I was actually I was friends with Ray Amate, who was the other like co-songwriter for Immortal Bird, and we were just basically co-writing those songs together at the time, and I was just helping with formulate some guitar riffs and structures and things like that, and yeah, that was just a couple of years working on an EP and an album. It was kind of cool too at the time, because that was still the beginning of Worldrun, and Worldrun was so much more folky and melodic, and Immortal Bird was a lot more harsh and just dark and grisly. So it was nice to have that outlet for that time, for sure.
All right, and then also in 2015 you got back in the studio with Worldrun and you worked on Sleep at the Edge of the Earth. Did you feel like pressure to follow up Olden Tales and Deathly Trails?
I don't know. I wouldn't say. I mean, I guess there's always a certain pressure to following up a debut. You put a lot of effort into your debut, and then to do a second one's always a little. I'm sure there was some pressure, but I don't know. A lot of the material actually for Sleep was written by the time Olden Tales came out, so we kind of had a vague idea of what Sleep was going to be for a while. There was pressure in getting it right and in you know, orchestrating it correctly and getting the sound right and all that, but luckily a lot of the songs were pretty solid from the get-go, so I don't know, I think that one came together pretty well. It's interesting.
Also that same year you went back in the studio with Immortal Bird and you did Empress Abscess. What was that whole recording process like?
Oh, good. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, that was kind of going, you know, in tandem with Worldrun in my life at that time, and it was, like I said, it was a good, different outlet, just a different attitude, totally different sort of thing, and just a sort of, yeah. I mean, I'm really happy with how that record turned out. I'd come back to it, and yeah. Hey, Jake.
Yeah, we're getting interrupted by Jake from Etherrealm, who I actually interviewed last September.
Oh. Almost. You almost got it.
Now we're just getting serious, and now it's getting hilarious.
Oh. All right.
Oh, wow.
All right, give that back to me later.
All right, cool.
Okay, we're doing an interview. Okay, so where were we talking about?
Is this that cool?
Yeah, it looks cool, man. So I think we're talking about the Immortal Bird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just talking about Empress Abscess.
Yeah, good record. I was happy with that. Like I said, co-wrote that one. Just helped with the arranging process and stuff like that. And yeah, really happy with that one.
And then you did Replaciar. I can't even.
Replaciar.
I keep fucking it up for some reason. And then
it's a weird one.
Do Not Deviate in 2017. Dude, what was that whole experience like?
Great. I mean, it was definitely really happy with those records too. It was that was. I'm trying to think. I mean, it's been a while since I've really thought about those projects, but like I said, more of an arranging process for that one than like a actual songwriting. More just focusing on, mostly just on doing vocals and stuff, and that was sort of the main difference, honestly, at the time, is that Worldrun, you know, I was doing the guitar and vocal thing. Replaciar was just doing the frontman thing, which isn't something I've done for a while, and so it's a different vibe, you know, just kind of trying to do the vocals only thing. But
yeah, and then of course going back into Worldrun, the last album, Veil of Imagination, was a kick-ass album. What was that whole writing like? And that was honestly the album that really got me into you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely proud of that one. That was, I'm trying to think. I mean, wrote most of that material over the course of, I'd say, 2016 through 2017. I don't know. I feel like Veil of Imagination felt like sort of, how do I say it? Like it definitely, for us, felt like the most coming into our own sound sort of record, I think. Like, I mean, clearly there's, like, you know, still a lot of influences in there that you can hear, but it just felt like we had dropped some of the pretension, some of the overly worried thoughts about, like, what genre we were inhabiting. We sort of were trying to let that go a little bit and just create something that felt a little more natural, maybe, than the previous two records, a little less forced, hopefully, just kind of get a little bit more adventurous with some of the songwriting choices and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely an album we're really proud of. It felt like sort of a little bit of a transitionary moment for us, I think.
And then the most recent album, Epigon, is absolutely kick-ass. What was that whole writing and recording process for that?
Well, Epigon's a weird one, because it's actually a mixture of a lot of old material mixed with a lot of new material, which is kind of like, I had like a lot of these riffs sitting in the back on my computer, and a lot of shit that I didn't really know what to do with for a while. And I think after Veil of Imagination, we had realized that we could expand our sound a little bit more broadly than we previously thought. And so basically, once came time for album number 4, I kind of dug back into my files and was like, oh, I think this shit could work now, at least some of it. I took out some bits that didn't make any sense, but I collected a lot of it and wrote some new stuff, and yeah, so that was kind of a weird, interesting. We also had to record that whole album kind of in the COVID lockdown situation, which was, you know, not as fun. So I would say that generally Epigon was a weirder and slightly more difficult process than previous records, just because of the nature of the songs and the nature of the times. but we're happy with how it turned out. So.
And would you just consider this picking up where you left off after Veil of Imagination, or because I noticed with all your albums, it's always like 3 or 4 years apart. Would it almost be like a new beginning for Worldrun in a way?
I think in a way, and we're always trying to make our records feel like distinct in some way. Like I think it. I think it sounds like Wilderun, whatever that means. But we always try to make sure that each record stands on its own and is different enough where you're not just like trying to compare it in your head too much to the other record, because I don't know, I want people to just listen to the record as its own unique experience. It's its own vibe, it's its own atmosphere. It has a different message, a different, all the lyrical contents, it's kind of its own thing. And yes, I don't know, it just kind of lives in its own world,
Right, so I guess with every album, you always take like a different approach to it.
In some way.
So there's not like a formula that Worldrun sticks with.
I mean, I guess that there's always similarities because it's the same people making the records, and there's certain intrinsic things that are going to be similar. We all do things in a certain way, and you can hear that on the records. But we always try to make some sort of concerted effort to switch it up so it feels unique, for sure.
Yeah, and I've noticed with this album, I feel like it's a concept. Does it like each song like flow so well, or is like every song need to be listened into a certain order, like in the direct order from first to last?
That's always important to us. I mean, we try to make the songs. I mean, I think for the most part, most of the songs could be listened to on their own, and they work well. But I think you'll get more out of them if you listen to the record. I don't know. We always just think of things obviously pretty long form. So I think, but you can listen to the single tracks for the most part, and they'll I think be still rewarding.
All right. And as a vocalist, do you need to hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or do you usually have like a lyrical concept in mind that can help determine the outcome of the music itself?
I'm almost always music first. I'm almost always just kind of music first, and that sort of informs what the lyrics are going to be. Like music can speak, a sort of emotion. Music kind of can speak an ineffable emotion that you can then attempt to try to squeeze lyrics out of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, which is why sometimes our lyrics are a little weird and abstract, because sometimes I'm just trying to like write lyrics that fit music that have an emotion that doesn't actually mean something super concrete, if that makes sense. So I always kind of take it from that way. The only exception, the song Distraction 1 off of the most recent record, that actually was a poem I wrote, and then
Wow.
it very coincidentally like fit into that song. Like I was trying to write lyrics for that song, and for some reason that poem popped in my head, and I had to tweak a couple words, but I never do that. It's not like I read a lot of poetry, but it just kind of worked. So
yeah. Do you tend to leave lyrics open to interpretation, or do you try to engage the listener into what the songs are about?
I mean, I try to leave them open enough. I mean, they have a meaning. They have a meaning to me, and it's interesting though, because they'll have a meaning while I'm writing them, but then by the end of the song, when I'm done writing it, sometimes the song will have created like its own new meaning by the end, and sometimes I don't even necessarily know where it's going. I just kind of try to follow it. So, but I try to phrase things in ways that are open-ended enough to where if your life experience is different than mine, which it probably is because we're all different, then you can like, I get a little bit, okay. If your life experience is different than mine, which of course everyone's is, you can still feel some personal connection. People always, I think everyone will feel art, in a stronger way if like they can tie it into their own life in some way. So.
All right. Do you usually try to look for inspiration when writing music, or does inspiration just come out of the blue?
I mean, I think I just consume enough shit that I like that's the inspiration. I mean, it's not like I guess I don't like actively pursue inspiration. I just like shit. So I don't know, I just whatever. If I like something, I'll usually just, get into it as deeply as I can, and then that's inspiration. It's not like it's something I have to try hard for or anything.
Right. And kind of like going into the live show, is there like a similar energy to playing live as to opposed to recording, or are they almost kind of like two separate entities?
It's very different for sure. It feels, playing live is definitely a totally different beast. It's definitely, when you're making a record, you're really paying attention to I don't know, like the details and like the deeper meaning behind everything and the concept, whereas live is more of like, it's about being in the present moment. It's about sort of, I always think that playing live is a little bit more about the audience than it is about you. Making a record is about, I think, for the most part, you just got to make it about you, and you got to do what you want to personally do and not worry what anyone else thinks. But I think playing live shows is for the fans. I think you got to do it for people who want to hear you and just try to make it as good of an experience for them. So it's a different focus,
Right, and kind of like playing with other bands. Like I know you played with like Swallow the Sun, we're more kind of like doomy, kind of like death metal. But then you also on Prog Power with like some power metal bands like Seven Spires and Stradivarius. Do you ever notice like a different crowd reaction depending on the tours that you're on?
Yeah, I'd say so. Different audiences, depending on the genre, definitely have slightly different attitudes. I think that the Swallow the Sun crowd is a little bit more subdued. A little bit more chill, a little bit more just kind of wanting to chill and get into the atmosphere and just kind of hang out, which sometimes, like, that vibe can be a little disconcerting live because you don't get as much energy,
Yeah.
And at first you're like, oh no, dude, did we do something wrong? But then you realize that no, everyone's just kind of listening and they're engaged. Then you talk to people after the show and they loved it and they were totally paying attention. But which honestly is a thing that happens a lot with our music. Like we don't necessarily get as much like fist bumping, like we get some of that, but we don't get as much like engagement as like a power metal band would or something. But then we talked to people after the shows and people seemed very engaged and people seemed to like it. So yeah.
All right, so I got two more questions for you. Okay. You're kind of like going back in the song because you have like songs that are like 3-4 minutes, and you have like songs that are like 10-11 minutes. So for you, how do you know when a song is done?
That's a hard question. By re-listening to it too many times. I don't know. Like every, you don't. When I'm starting to write a song, I don't really know how long it. Like it's not like I go into it knowing, oh, this is a long song or this is a short song. I just mess with it for a while, and then usually, if I put in enough work and I put in enough re-listens and I pay attention enough, it'll like tell me when it's done. Like I'll, I don't know if I'm right, but I like the final product, so I don't know. It just the song kind of speaks for itself if you give it enough time.
All right. And the final question I want to ask is coming from Massachusetts, because the Massachusetts metal scene has so diverse bands with like the metalcore scene with like Killswitch Engage, Unearth, and even like other bands like of course your fellow Massachusettsers and Seven Spires, and even then like Revocation, Abnormality. So is there like a scene in Massachusetts that Worldrun fell apart of, or was it the goal for the band to like get outside of your town and play in front of like different countries and different audiences and stuff?
I think the latter. I'd say that. Don't get me wrong, I value a good, music scene in any city. I think that's really important. But when making Worldrun, we just, I don't know, I don't think we even really considered the scene or not. Like, not to say we were intentionally trying to be different. We just kind of wanted to write songs we liked, and it definitely didn't, easily fit into any scene. I would say American scene. It's at least not as easily as it probably would have in Europe or whatever. It's definitely more European-inspired music. But I don't know. I think that it gave us an advantage. I think standing out, having something different for people that they don't necessarily hear all the time is always a good thing. So I think it did us good.
Awesome. So before we go, I just want to thank you for this interview. It's just anything else with Worldrun you'd like to promote in terms of like tours? You also have the current album now. It's just anything else you'd like to plug?
Well, I don't know when this is going to come out, but
we're supposed to be up like after like midnight or something.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're watching this like right when it comes out, we're doing a week of shows up the East Coast. So 6 shows. So if you're on the East Coast, check it out. But besides that, the newest album's called Epigon, and just check it out, and see if you like it.
All right. So everybody, Evan from Worldrun. We'll see you next time.